Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, everybody. It's time for the Books That Make You show. I'm Desiree Duffy, your host, and today we're talking about books that make you explore Antarctica and face peril with a man whose expeditions may have revealed an eighth continent on our planet. When you read books, you do so from the safety of your home, maybe on your back porch, battling off a few of those summer mosquitos, or in the fall, cozied up in front of the fireplace. It is amazing how books transport us to those perilous places, both real and imaginary, and reveal worlds that most of us can only dream about exploring. Well, in his book, Mighty Bad Land, author and explorer Bruce Luyendyk takes readers to the last wilderness on our planet, Antarctica. But unlike most recent books on Antarctica, the reader becomes embedded with this geologist and his team. It's like you're experiencing firsthand all of the challenges that they are, the companionship, the failures, the bravery, the cowardice, and the success in scientific research in this really unforgiving but beautiful place. Bruce Luyendyk, I am so excited to talk to you about your book. You have quite a distinguished list. You are a professor emeritus from UC Santa Barbara. You were elected a fellow of the Geological Society of America and the American Geophysical Union and the American Association for the Advancement of Science. In addition, in 2016, the U.S. Board on Geographic Names honored you by naming Summit 1070 in Antarctica, Mount Luyendyk. That is so cool. I am so excited to talk to you about your book. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Desiree. Yeah.
Okay. Give us the laydown of this very expansive book. It's been called a Geo Thriller, which I think is exciting because sometimes we think of scientific books or true life books as being dry, but you have a lot of excitement in this story. Can you tell us about it, please?
Sure. Well, I think everybody has an imagination view of Antarctica. I mean, I certainly did. We hear the lore of the trials, the tribulations, even the injuries, the deaths, and all those things that have happened to people. And as our team got ready to go there, we, of course, talked to other veterans about their experience. And my reaction to their stories was, yeah, really? I mean, like, I thought some of this might be a little bit of a stretch that I was hearing. And then after I got there and spent some time, I realized that nobody needs to make up any story about Antarctica. You tell the truth and it's kind of unbelievable. And so nobody needs to exaggerate. All these things that people were telling me turned out to be true and still surprised me. It's a place full of surprises, good and bad.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk about some of your discoveries, some of the things that you found there?
Yeah, so why did we go to all of this trouble? There were 6 of us. We had 4 scientists and 2 mountain guides. Only one of the mountain guides had been to Antarctica, and he had worked for the British Antarctic Survey in a different location. And where we went to Marie Birdland, we hadn't been there, and hardly anybody else had been there. It had only been seen in 1929. It was the first time any humans had ever seen the entire place. We were going down there on a research project to study the breakup of this giant supercontinent that I think a lot of people have heard about by now, Gondwana. And there were some puzzling questions about the place, about Gondwana idea, the supercontinent that existed maybe 100 million years ago or so. It was known that some of the islands and nations in the South Pacific should have been connected to Gondwana, but it wasn't, like, for instance, New Zealand, but it wasn't really sure where it was connected or if it was connected. So, like, for instance, New Zealand, where we were working, was known fairly well. Antarctica, not so much. So we were looking for evidence that we could really refine the idea of, well, some other pieces came off of Gondwana, and where are they now? So that was that was the main goal we were after. I should point out that the science team was three men and one woman who was my graduate student. And I was the senior person, I was the leader, the principal investigator, and then the two other men were research scientists who supposedly were working under my direction, but kind of when it gets to like herding cats when everybody has their own smart ideas and having to decide what do we do and when do we do it and how do we do it and whose idea is the one that we need to work on now. And so that's where a lot of the interpersonal relationships and actual conflicts came about. So that's kind of in a nutshell the landscape of it. Where is it? I mean, can I ask a question? It's in Marie Birdland, which, like, who is she and where is this place? Well, if you went to a map, let's start with the easy answer. Where is it? If you went to a map and you found Hawaii, and then you imagined you were sitting on Hawaii or standing there and you looked absolutely due south and you went to the bottom of the world, you'd end up in this place called Marie Birdland. And it's named, Marie Bird is the wife of an explorer, Admiral Richard Byrd, early part of the 20th century. And that's how it got its name. Now, the next question is, what's Mighty Badland? Well, Mighty Badland is a whimsical takeoff on Marie Birdland. And it's whimsical, but at the same time, it's serious. I mean, it has that name for a reason.
Yeah, I love that. I love the way the title of the book just came full circle for me. I didn't realize that. It made perfect sense. It's a mighty bad land. But I love that play on words. And yeah, it is a mighty bad land and perilous, dangerous. But at the same time, to have a little bit of whimsy, as you call it, sometimes helps ground us and perhaps helps us remember our humanity. And you talk about the personalities and how that created a lot of conflict. I mean, I can only imagine. I just went to a wedding with family. We haven't seen each other in 3 years and put us together for just a few hours. And it's like, but you're on this expedition and you're in this dangerous situation in this unknown land. It just creates all sorts of, points for people to have that conflict. Can you talk some more about the conflict and how that dynamic all played out?
Yeah, I think the conflicts, like you say, can happen around the house. But let me tell you where we were doing our research work. We were 800 miles from the nearest station, the nearest research station with humanity. So to put a perspective on that, what's 800 miles? It's like, I don't know if you're on the East Coast, it's like going from Washington, D.C. to Chicago, or on the West Coast, so like Los Angeles to Denver. And so you can imagine, like, you get on the airplane and then you take off and immediately you see below you nothing. It's all ice, rock, snow, and then you fly for hours, and then you land. You get ready to land at a place that there's nothing there either, where you're landing. And matter of fact, nobody's landed there before. So the six of you get dumped out in this situation. The plane, the U.S. It was the U.S. Navy Hercules C-130, which a lot of people have seen on the news. Anyway, they dump all your stuff out the tailgate of the airplane, and then after about half hour, an hour doing that, then they take off, and there you are. You've got everything you should need, even a paperclip. There's no 7-Eleven to go to, and there's no helicopter rescue either. You're way out of hundreds of miles beyond rescue range. So if you can imagine getting put into that situation with six people who might argue about who's making the coffee, you start thinking about other things. Like, you have to pull together. Nobody can slack off. Nobody can quit. And everybody's got to be on the team. So that said, what does a team look like? As I said earlier, the team looks like a bunch of strong individuals. So the one division that was sensible was that 2 of the 6 were the mountain guides, people who knew how to handle themselves in snow and ice. So, of course, they had ultimate authority on what was safe or not safe. And then the scientist, I was supposedly in charge, but being in the university for years, you learn to not always be on broadcast, but also be on receive. So you're listening to things people are saying because, they're pretty smart, and they don't say things that are irrelevant or off the wall. So it requires lots of listening, lots of back and forth, lots of cooperation. Even though you might have different goals, you realize that there's an overriding goal that people will buy into, and you realize that everybody has his contribution, and they need time to get their agenda underway also. So I think it's not like a family gathering for Thanksgiving, unless you can imagine where it would be in the middle of absolute nowhere with nobody else coming.
Yeah, nobody's coming to save you if you drop the turkey in the middle of the kitchen floor. You're on your own. What about physically? I just have to imagine that your body, did you train? What was it like just from an endurance and physical perspective?
Yeah, that's well put, that question. So we weren't mountaineering, like scaling cliffs and mountain peaks and things like that. Mostly we were doing a lot of hauling boxes and shoveling snow. So, I did training. I went to the Y, did all the strength training I could think of, and other people were doing similar things. But it's hard. It's really, really hard work. When somebody asks me, what's it like in Antarctica, and I know they're only going to listen for a sentence or two, I say, well, it's really hard. It's hard. And physically, it gets really exhausting. Anytime you want to move, you got to shovel something or pick something up or get yourself beat up on a snowmobile. So it's physically exhausting. And I'd say that I thought I was kind of a little bit underprepared. I didn't realize how strenuous it could get. But I managed. I do have asthma, so I had to pass a qualifying exam, physical, that showed that I was strong enough to work in that environment and not have an asthma attack. And I can talk more about that if you want to at some point. But I can also talk about, I'll tell you about that. So there's a big, thick medical forms you have to fill out going to doctors and dentists. And they ask you if you have asthma, and I checked the box. Yeah, I had asthma. So then I came back, rejected. So of course, not taking no for this, after all the trouble trying to get the money to go there, I figured asked what was the workaround for this, and they said that you do the cold air challenge. So they put me on a bicycle, had me breathe, clip my nose, put a tube in my mouth where I was breathing frozen air, and then bicycling up to my maximum heart rate for X minutes. Mm-hmm. And then they'd see if were getting asthma symptoms, see if I have any other symptoms. And that's the word was correct. Cold air challenge. It was really a challenge. But I did pass that. I passed that. So I did not have what's called cold air exercise induced asthma. So I got that checked off.
Good. And then can you tell us a moment, this trip, this journey, this expedition that's fraught with peril and danger? Was there a moment when you were afraid that you weren't going to make it? Was there a moment where somebody was in danger? Can you give us a little nugget?
Yeah, I can. I don't want to do spoilers, so I gotta be careful. I mean, that's okay. I'm not gonna do a spoiler story, okay?
Okay.
That's okay with you?
That's
okay.
Fine.
So here's the things that scared me. One were incidents of Antarctic blizzards. I mean, I think people who've lived in Minnesota and Colorado and other places have seen blizzards. But we're living in tents, 2 persons to a tent. And the blizzards go on for days. And then there's not drifting snow. These are howling things where me, I was frightened that the tent would blow away, which has happened to teams. So that's one stressor. The other stressor is driving across, these are not like, the snow around you is not like the snow you'd find on a ski slope, which is groomed and nice, maybe a few moguls here and there. It's not like that. It's rutted by the wind, because the wind carves it into ruts. So you're constantly watching out for tipping over on your snowmobile, or tipping over on your sled, falling and hurting yourself. The other thing that happens is some of the snow is blown away, and there's just glare ice. There's just slick ice that you have to walk over and travel over and drive over to get from point A to point B. And you can slip around, slide around, and slide down a hill. There are ways around that to control yourself, but it's not. It was kind of on the job training for me and most of us. And then, of course, there are crevasses, which are these deep slices into glaciers that, if you fall into one, you're likely to get injured or killed. The thing is that the glaciers these crevasses are often hidden, because the snow is blowing and creating covers where or bridges below which are these long, deep slices, and you can't see them except in certain conditions. So you can get surprised by driving or walking along, then all of a sudden, poof, the bottom goes out from underneath you.
And when you were there too, this was a while back, so you didn't have the luxury or the technology of GPS devices and things like that that could help you along the way. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We were navigating by sight and by compass. We didn't have satellite phones. We didn't have internet. We had a puny radio that we check in a couple days, once every day with the main base station at McMurdo. It usually worked. The check-in was a small 20-watt radio. We trained ourselves in advanced first aid. So we went to the Red Cross and took classes that were on the path to being an EMT, but one step below an EMT. So we were prepared for accidents like broken bones and pain, like morphine, and going into shock, which is the worst possible thing that can happen to somebody. And you have to realize that, like you said before earlier, that those helicopters are not coming; they can't get there. And the Hercules that would have to come get you, they're 3 or 4 hours away, and somewhere between 2/3 or half the time, the weather's so bad they can't fly.
Yeah.
So if you break a finger there, that can develop into an emergency situation. Somebody can go into shock from just a simple accident like that because you're so isolated. So that was the other thing I forgot to mention, forgetting about getting hurt and what are we going to do if we got hurt? How are we going to handle it?
Right. Now, as you're traveling, walking with others or hiking or on some kind of you had snowmobiles, was that right? Some kind of, I mean, how reliant were you on your team members? In other words, was this a situation where you're wondering, oh no, if Bob screws this up, I'm dead because of Bob? Was there any situations where you were worried about having, your team members having your back or you having their back? Was that a concern?
Yeah, all of the above. We traveled we made a base camp called the depot where the plane dropped us off. And then we went on satellite. We traveled to satellite places where we set up satellite camps. And to do that, we had these snowmobiles, which are not like the things you see on ski slopes. They're like these lumbering behemoths that travel at maybe a little bit of a run. And we're towing these cargo sleds, these big cargo sleds. And so the issue is, what if one of those snowmobiles goes down a crevasse? Then what? Well, we were roped ourselves to the tow ropes that were attached from the snowmobiles to the sleds, or we roped ourselves to the sleds. And so if we were traveling like that, all in a train, we were then really relied on the person who was first. The person who was first in the train, like 2 or 3 sleds and snowmobiles, had to be alert, couldn't doze off, had to be looking for the glare ice, had to be looking for the indications of hidden crevasses. And we were all dependent on that person. Now, when we hiked some places, we would do something that I think people have seen in movies and on TV. We would rope together, where we wore climbing gear with ropes attached to harnesses that we wore, and we had tools. So that the person who went first was again checking for obstacles, and then the 2 people, we usually be 3 people, the 2 people behind would be prepared to arrest the person's fall and then start a rescue if the person fell into a crevasse. So yes, almost always the mountaineering people would be either driving the train of snowmobiles or leading the group on ropes. But us behind, we got training in McMurdo Station on how to do the rests, the stops, and how to do the rescues if somebody went down, how to set up the anchors and the pulleys and all that climbing gear issues that you might have seen in movies. So, yeah, everybody has to be on their game.
And so it sounds like some of the stuff we do see in movies has some truth behind it. That is really how you traveled and how you explored. That's fascinating. One of the things, is there something you can share with us about Antarctica that maybe the average person doesn't realize, even to this day? Is there something that you feel we should know or that you want the world to realize?
Yeah. Like reflecting on this experience, the feeling of being alone, that is not, I mean, people feel alone in crowds, and I get that. But we were physically really, really alone. And you could stop and think about that, and I did. And you can go, the feeling is kind of a whipsaw, like, hey, I'm alone. There's nobody for hundreds of miles. And you get kind of a rush about that, just thinking about that. And then it kind of seeps into your body thinking, wow, I'm at risk here. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've got my crew, but we are really alone.
Yeah.
So it's something that when I experienced that realization from time to time, when I had a moment to think about it, it's something that went through my entire body from my head to my feet. Just that.
I can imagine.
Absorbing it.
You're giving me shivers just thinking of that because, yeah, we're social animals. We're humans. We're used to having people around us. Even if we're sitting in the house and we're all alone in the house, we know the neighborhood is right outside the door, the town we live in or near. So that's really just so awesome in the truest sense of the word. What about the beauty, the wildlife? Did you see penguins? What was the setting really like?
Yeah, the setting was wide fields of snow with snowfields and glaciers cutting down through mountains that were devoid of any signs of degradation or weathering, because there's no running water. Rarely is there running water. There's no signs of civilization. There's no contrails. There's no telephone lines. There's no road cuts. There's no smoke coming from chimneys. The setting is just wild. It's wildness. I want to go back to something about aloneness. Some people have said to me, well, you got 6 people there. Why would you feel alone? Yeah, the 6 people who are there are really kind of one kind of person. I mean, you're all so connected. You're all so responsible for each other. It's not like you're alone you're with a bunch of strangers. You're with people that are connected and depend. We depend on each other. So it's like one alone, tight group. So it's almost like one big person being alone. Mm-hmm. Back to the beauty, it's just unexpected things. Just unexpected. And the life, there's no life on the continent itself. The penguins are at the margins of the continent, and because they're marine seabirds. We did see some petrels that would fly inland to over where we were to roost, make roosts. Snow petrels, beautiful birds. They were like 50 miles away from the ocean. They were flying in to make roosts in the mountains around us. But the penguins I saw a lot of penguins around McMurdo Station when we made different shakedown trips and exploration trips around the station. But we didn't see anything where we were. It's just devoid of life. Matter of fact, this is an interesting, weird side of life about life. There's no bacteria. There's no viruses. There's no microbes. So you really don't get BO. You're really kind of clean all the time. That was an interesting little sidelight.
Never would have thought of that.
Yeah, I didn't. I had brought stick deodorant, but then it was frozen anyway.
I don't need this. I don't smell.
Yeah.
Even if I do, I don't care what my friends think because they smell too. What do you think's underneath? Because it's been frozen for so long. Are there bacteria and viruses and things frozen down below? What do you imagine is underneath?
Yeah, first of all, the ice of Antarctica, Antarctica is about the size of the U.S. and Mexico put together, and it's 90-odd% covered in ice, and the rocks show up at the peripheries, the mountain ranges, the peripheries, and some mountains going through the center of the continent. So you can see that there's a continent underneath this ice. And the ice is being drilled by different projects to get records of climate. And in there, I'm not familiar with what's been recovered like microbes in the ice cores. I don't think so. The continent itself, though, the older rocks, like the 100 million year rocks, et cetera, do have fossils in them, pointing out to the climate that was similar to like New Zealand and Patagonia in the geologic past. But the interesting thing that I wanted to mention here, since you asked a question like this, is what's the difference between Antarctica and the Arctic? So the main difference is Antarctica is a continent which is buried by ice. The Arctic is an ocean that's covered by ice. So the Arctic is an ocean and the Antarctic is a continent. It's a big concept that a lot of people haven't thought about.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. And I love just imagining the fossils and what is underneath there. And yeah, I know they're drilling, but they're drilling like a very small little slice. So there's just got to be so many things underneath that in that continent that we may never see, we may never know, but it's fascinating to think about it and imagine it. So, okay, we're running up against the clock here, Bruce. Can you tell people where they can go to find out more about you, find your book, Mighty Badland? Give us your details.
Sure. I'll even hold up a copy of it, Mighty Badland. It's a gorgeous picture on the front. I've been dog-eared with parts that I read at the book signing events. Some of my greatest hits. You can buy this online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. So there's a hardcover and a Kindle and an audiobook. And also a lot of bookstores independent bookstores are carrying it now too. So it was released on May 30th. And so it's easily available online and is being distributed steadily through bookstores, independent bookstores throughout the U.S. and I think Canada, but not positive. and it'll be in Europe in the summertime.
Oh, exciting. Bruce Luyendyk, author of Mighty Bad Land. Thank you so much for joining us on the Books That Make You show. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Desiree. Thanks for the great questions.
You bet. My pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us today. You can find out more about us on our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Please make sure you ring the bell, you subscribe. Also, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter so you never miss an awesome show with authors like Bruce, telling us about his experiences in Antarctica and so much more. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.